Bada bing, bada bam. What's up? Welcome, YouTube. Sorry you missed the first 90 seconds of the show where all I said is, oh my God, I forgot to start the stream. But in case anything crazy happened, I did hit start record. So we have the archive, so to speak. Anyway, today's show is a little bit all over the place. We got a lot of different stuff. Thursdays tend to be like that. We got Kedrick Golston joining us at the bottom of the hour. What does he expect from the Commanders' D-line now that Chase Young and Montez Sweat are not a part of it? Kevin Sheehan's going to hop on with us at 5 o'clock. Talk a little Wizards this hour as well. Can they ever play defense? Woo! Something that I underrated about this team we'll get to before the end of the hour. But Anthony, we start with EB's comments today about Sam Howell and kind of where he is, and I think it's actually kind of interesting. Speaking of the Wizards, to compare the approach that like an Eric Bieniemy is taking to one that like Will Dawkins is taking, and Dawkins was on the Sports Junkies. They were at ESA Friday, I think it was. Whenever they were there, I think it was Friday. They were over at ESA and they had a bunch of people on set. It was really great. Definitely worth going back in the archives and checking out. And I actually want to pull something Dawkins said about analytics in general later on for a rant that I'm waiting to do at 6 o'clock. Oh, God, do I have a good one for you guys at 6 o'clock. But Dawkins has talked extensively about how he is looking at a variety of internal metrics to say, like, oh, we need to do this, that thing. We need to play this way. These numbers we want to be at a certain level, and that tells us how we're doing. And JP Finley, our buddy, our pal, who goes to be Mitch and Finley over on the fan. People know who JP Finley is. I don't need to tell you who JP Finley is. He tweeted out something earlier that was like, you know, a lot of coordinators give you this like little steps kind of thing that tries to make themselves look good, and EB doesn't play that game for better or for worse. And I don't actually know if it's if it is a better or for a worse. Maybe it's better for now and worse for EB's head coaching candidacy. Maybe it's better for that because it doesn't look like he's making excuses, but it's actually worse because they would talk, or they should be talking more about some of the internal, like, do they have those internal metrics that are good things for Sam to be measured by? But at the end of the day, what I think it speaks to as well is, even though so much of what is happening right now within the Commanders organization is about the future, and we see some of that yesterday, obviously, with the trades, or the last couple of days with these trades, but also the word out of Ashburn is that this is not a punt. They didn't fire sale. They didn't trade Brissett. They didn't trade Curtis Samuel. They didn't trade Antonio Gibson. They traded one guy who they had to trade because the deal was it was almost a first-round pick for Montez Sweat, which is crazy. And then the other one who they think they're going to be better off without. So, and that's not just long-term. Like, that's right now. And so this is a team, whether this is foolish or not, that is trying to win right now and like cares about winning desperately right now, versus a team like the Wizards. And also there's obviously the context of a different sport and kind of the way that team building works in those two sports and leagues, that has these internal things that I think are really good and really smart and great to pay attention to, that are better judges of progress than wins and losses. So I thought that was an interesting thing to point out by JP. And I also kind of wonder, like, you know, I almost wish the roles were reversed between like Ron, who's always talking about, oh, it's all about the quarterback, and the offensive coordinator who also, you know, speaking of bars, EB dropped we played well enough to entertain everybody, but not well enough to win line today. And you kind of wish that the roles were reversed in some way, where it's like, hey, look, offensively, we're trying to develop this quarterback. We're trying to get the, you know, score as many points as we can, but also make sure that he understands how to continue to be more efficient and do all these things moving forward. Where Ron is like, yo, we got to win. And it doesn't seem like he has that urgency in the same way, or even the understanding in the same way?
Yeah, I think on the EB front, I just think in terms of like not celebrating like the small victories, small progress and things of that of Sam is just more so like he has a high standard, and I think it's rightly so, and I think that's also part of the reason we brought this guy in the first place. Like, he's come from a place that all they know is winning, so I understand that on Bieniemy's front, but Ron is more so. I think it's just a call of desperation, but he's also trying to just ride, the Sam Howell chill as much as he can, because he's played it all season. He sort of kind of played it a little bit. Yeah, he just that is what he likes to fall on, and it's almost like he's trying to make Sam the scapegoat for his lack of success to an extent.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the reason because like I think you could listen to the things that like I say. I'll just speak for myself. I won't speak for the media at large, right? The things that I say about this season, where it's like it is about Sam, like figuring out, like the most important thing is figuring out whether Sam Howell is your guy for at least next year, if not the next 5 years, right? And then Ron says it, and then you crush Ron. It's like, well, that's not fair. Like, why does he not get to speak the truth? Especially coming from me, a guy who's always like, hey, it's okay to tell the truth into a microphone if you're a coach, right? But it's when he says it.
Yep.
It's like, yes, figuring that stuff out is important. When we ask you about something that's unrelated, that is another additional problem that has nothing to do with the quarterback, don't bring up the quarterback. Multiple things can be happening at once. When we talk to you about the defense's struggles and why you can't figure out that side of the ball when like that's supposed to be your specialty, Del Rio is a former NFL head coach, and you guys are bottom 5, bottom 3, bottom 2 in like some of the most important defensive statistics. Don't tell me about, well, the quarterback is coming along. Like that actually doesn't matter right now to that particular question. And so when EB is asked specifically today, like, hey, how's Sam coming along as a franchise quarterback? Like, this is how he answers it.
You know what? I think Sam is right where he needs to be. He's making the necessary steps moving forward. We just got to find ways to make sure that we continue to take care of business so we can continue with the improvement.
Because that's the other thing, too, is I feel like EB in that answer expresses something that has been a big frustration of mine. And like something that I've gone back and forth with Linnell about, for instance, in Overreaction Tuesday and off the air. And, I've gone back and forth with fans about this, too. Like the idea that you have to like make Sam's job as hard as possible to quote unquote develop him at the expense of winning games is so stupid. Like you can put together a game plan each and every week that doesn't feature Sam having to make 30 decisions and 25 great throws, and you're not hurting his development. You're actually helping it. And by the way, you're going to win games and you're going to produce on offense. And if you have those, like, there's no reason you can't do that with a 10-year vet. I think too often it's like, oh, we got to test this guy. That's what it feels like with Ron. It's like, well, we have to develop the quarterback. We have to drop him back and see what he's made of and let him get reps and experience. And it's like, no, just set him up for success and let him continue to succeed. And I think that dichotomy, that contrast is what frustrates me so much. And some of what I appreciated about what EB seemed to be on today. There's something else he said that caught my ear as well. Play that for you next. Before Kendrick Golston joins us at 4:30, it's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. So, Anthony, we always kind of sit back and wonder, like, what's EB going to say this week? Some weeks you get, like, 2-minute monologues for every answer. Although I feel like the last couple weeks he's been shorter.
He has been shorter.
Bro, I'm not going to lie. I feel like there are times that people in Ashburn listen to this show. I never get any feedback about it, but no one on the PR staff, no one inside the building has ever reached out and been like, yo, you were right on that. Or like, yeah, that really, ticked that person off. But there are times that we say stuff or that I say stuff and then it happens and I'm just like, or it changes. And I'm like, that's weird. Either I was right and like someone else got in their ear or like they listened to the feedback and giving me a big middle finger without ever addressing it directly. But like I swear, like 2 weeks ago, I was just like, you know what? I'm over Bieniemy at these press conferences. Mm-hmm. He speaks forever and he doesn't say anything. And if you're not going to say anything, just do the short stuff. And now all of his answers are like 30 seconds long.
Yeah, no more 20-minute pressers.
Yeah, it was nuts. Or maybe the PR staff was like, hey, you don't have to filibuster. Like we'll be all right. If you get done faster, you're done. There's no time minimum.
Yeah. Who knows?
I have no idea. But I definitely like finally broke on that like 2 weeks ago and was like, I'm tired of this. And then it's been shorter the last couple weeks. You know what's going to happen now, right?
It's going to go back to being long.
He's going to give like a 7-minute answer to something next week.
Oh my gosh. You're speaking into existence. It's going to happen.
I guess this will be the test. If people in Ashburn are listening, the secret code word that EB has to put in an answer next week is elephant.
The elephant in the room.
If all of a sudden he drops, I mean, that's the thing. I can't be too obvious, but I don't want it to be something that would probably come up anyway.
That would be hilarious.
So if he drops elephant in the presser next week, then we know.
Are you going to remember?
If he says elephant, I will.
Okay.
If I'm going through the transcript and I'm like, wait a second. That's an elephant.
I need to put this in the rundown so I know. Look out for elephant next Thursday.
Yeah. I guess we're really going to find out, huh? Set ourselves up for success here. That's what it's about. EB's got to set Sam Howell up for success. And he was asked about how to do it against Bill Belichick and the Patriots. And one thing that EB definitely still does that I get, it's very politician-y, which I don't mean as a compliment or a slight. It's just like factual. What politicians do is, like, politicians have talking points. If let's say you're an advocate for a certain policy and that's really what you want the message of the day to be, you get asked something that's unrelated and you kind of half answer that question and then pivot and then you say the thing that you wanted to say anyway. Yeah, that's a great question. It's really important. We're working on that. But what we really want to do is blah, 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 blah. And so one of the first like real questions Bieniemy gets asked today is, how do you prepare Sam Howell? And is Sam Howell or is Bill Belichick's defense one of the best tests that you'll see for Sam Howell? Something that I think is 100% true, and we'll get into over the next two shows to get you prepared for the Patriots game this weekend. But it was very clear to me that Bieniemy's like mantra this week is to finish plays. And I wonder how much of that goes to like the Jahan Dotson, we flinch in big moments type of thing. I wonder if that's a team-wide thing because of how bad they've been finishing defensively. But here was Bieniemy in full, like very clearly, again, politician-y in nature, not a slight, not a compliment, making his point.
You know what? Every week will be a huge test. But obviously, when you're going against Bill Belichick and his defense, there's always a challenge. These guys are pretty damn good. They do a hell of a job. They're a well-coached staff. They got some good players. We got to go out and be on top of our game. More than anything, we got to find a way to finish. We got to find a way to make plays when needed, and we got to find a way to finish.
See, I could read that a couple of ways. But I think in regards to the offense, if you're going to read it most directly, like, it's not a shot at Terry, because like that's not someone who's taking a shot. It's just like, hey, like we had opportunities, and it goes to kind of what Logan was talking about on Take Command. If you missed the podcast or missed the segment yesterday that we played for you from the podcast, like Logan, as crazy as this sounds, and I don't agree with this wholeheartedly, and we had a back and forth about it on the show, but like Logan puts the loss last week on the offense because while, yes, the defense gave up 38 points, they also, held their ground in a lot of situations. They made some plays in the red zone. Some of those points kind of come in late game situations after a bad turnover, a turnover on, the pick, turnover on downs. And he looks at it from his perspective as someone who played offense, not just 10 years in the NFL, but his entire life. And he goes, the offense had opportunities to make plays. They didn't. And I think that if you're the offensive coordinator, that should definitely be your perspective. Like, you're not worried about, like, yeah, would you love, if there's a way for you to go over to Benjamin St. Juste and go, hey, man, this is how you don't get mossed. Cool. But really, that's not your job. Your job is to say, what could our unit, what could our side of the ball have done better? And if Terry makes either one of the catches on third or fourth down, where they ultimately turn the ball over on downs, kind of at the 40-yard line there, early fourth quarter, then that's a different ball game. If Jahan catches it more cleanly on the third down where he should have caught it anyway, like that's a conversion right there, and not a play that gets screwed up by New York and by the league, and that Ron loses a challenge on. Like, just catch the ball, man. And so it's things like that of like, how do we on our end of it make sure that we leave no crumbs, that we are cleaner in what we are doing. And it's going to be a stupid challenge. To be very clear, like, there are very few defenses that present a bigger coaching challenge than what you see against New England, because like you just don't know what to prepare for. Like, you have to prepare for everything. They can play 3-4. They can play 4-3. They can play a bear front. They can play a 5 down. They can play a 3 down. They'll do a 2 down. They'll be 4 down, but one of those guys is actually a linebacker. Surprise! Oh, they got 3 linebackers on the field. Oh, crap. 2 of those guys are safeties. What are they doing there? Hey, that's safety. What are you doing over there? That's a cornerback spot. That corner. Why is he playing middle linebacker? Like, they will mess with you. And for a quarterback in Sam Howell, who's had problems identifying this stuff, I think it's almost like, if it wasn't so damn terrifying, it would be funny that, like, EB is talking about finishing, and I am petrified of them even getting started in the first place. Like, pre-snap, good freaking luck, man. And so, as a OC, I don't know what you do with the young quarterback against Belichick. You take a look at what they've done against offenses similar to yours, and you take a best guess. But you know that Belichick is going to mix it up, which is why, by the way, a more veteran offensive line at center at it, like literal center, is better. I thought this was interesting. EB today asked about Chris Paul, and he said, it's not really about Chris Paul. It's about the guy next to him and Tyler Larson.
You know what? I don't think it was necessarily just about Chris Paul, which I thought Chris Paul did a good job. I thought having an experienced center in there where those guys could calm the storm. I thought the communication up front was a lot better. That doesn't knock anybody else. I just thought these guys were in chemistry and in sync together. Now, just because it happened last week, we need to make sure that we can reproduce exactly what we did, but obviously we need to finish better. So when it's all said and done with, I want those guys always over-communicating and always on the same page. And that starts with the center.
It's a big Tyler Larson week. Again, I mean, every week's going to be a big Tyler Larson week. That's why he's there compared to Nick Gates. Like, he's more veteran. He's more experienced. He can help Sam out more, not just with protections, but with, like, if you want to run the football this week, you got to get it targeted. You got to know who are we assigning our blocks based off of, which player, because that guy's in the place of where the Mike linebacker is, but he's a safety. He's a corner. He's a defensive tackle that for some reason is playing off the ball. So how are we going to handle it? Like, these are the kinds of things you have to deal with against New England, and it's going to be interesting to see how they handle it coming up on Sunday. All right, still to come here on the Hoffman Show. Kevin Sheehan's going to join us at 5 o'clock. Interested to get his thoughts on a couple of things, including whether he would have gone further at the trade deadline. Would he have traded a 6th rounder for Jacoby Brissett, or Brissett for a 6th rounder? What did he make of the returns for Young and Sweat? Obviously, he's talked about that a bunch on his show, but if you're working and want to hear Sheehan's take, you don't have to go to the podcast. You don't have to do anything. Just hang out. He'll be here 5 o'clock to do that. Also, coming up later on in the show, our NFL tiers. Could be some significant movement in that today. That's at 5:30, as we do every single Thursday. But coming up next, when there's stuff to talk about along the D-line in Washington, there's one man we call. It is Kedrick Golston, and we're calling him next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Our pleasure to welcome to the show our good friend Kedrick Golston, of course, longtime Commanders defensive lineman. Ked, what's up, man? How are you?
Craig, how you doing, man? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Our pleasure as always. Doing well. Although I am moving right now, so it's been a little stressful, as you can imagine.
The joy of moving. It's one of those things where the goal is just to get the boxes in the other building, but then
Yes.
you realize once you get them there, you got to do something with them.
Yeah, I don't want to think about that part right now. We're very much just get things, because we're literally moving across the street from one building to another. And so we're just like, it feels very stupid because we're just like toting these carts across the street. with all of our stuff. I guess we have to be moving, but I just imagine people walking by be like, what are those two people doing? Me and my wife just like wheeling pots across the street.
Hey, such is life, man.
Such is life. So we wanted to have you on, of course, because of the trade deadline and the moves the Commanders make. They unload Chase Young and Montez Sweat. They get some nice draft capital in return. Let's just start super broad, though. Like, what is it that you hear the news that Tez is getting traded. You hear the news that Chase is getting traded. What do you make of it?
It's super interesting, right? I mean, I think this time last year, we were thinking about is Deron Payne going to get traded? You know what I mean? When you just look at kind of conventional wisdom and are they really going to dedicate that many resources to two defensive tackles? And they decided to. And then the question became, well, once they've paid Allen and Payne, can they really afford to keep both of them? So we just all assumed that they would pick between the two. But I also think that now that, the season's going the way that it's going, the defense has some good moments, has some bad moments. And so you kind of, reassessing the situation. And so if you know you're not going to, one, be able to re-sign those guys, two, want to re-sign those guys, then I think it was a real shrewd move for them to be able to get some type of compensation back for those players and to give them the opportunity to go out there and, get with a new organization and hopefully for both of those guys hit the free market and make all the money they can.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, this all starts though with the fact that they didn't it didn't work. Like they are one of the worst defenses in the league production-wise this year, and we can parse out some of the numbers maybe and say, oh, well, the offense put them in bad spots in this game, whatever. But like at the end of the day, now we're halfway through it, and they're second worst in the league in yards and points against. Some of the advanced analytics, they're bottom 5. Like it's bad. Why do you think it didn't work ultimately with all that talent on that D-line where they have not been able to be good, nevertheless dominant in the way that I think a lot of us were hoping?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know what I mean? You just look at the pedigree of those guys, and from an individual standpoint, have some really big moments. I got a ton of respect for those interior guys, and I really enjoy watching Sweat play. And Young, he came here as a rookie and was all that we thought he would be, and then obviously had the setbacks with injuries. Without being in those meetings, understanding, you hear a lot of – the sad thing about it is now is you're hearing a lot about, them talking about Chase freelancing and kind of doing his own thing. So I can't speak to that, but I do know, if you are a dominant defense, right, like everybody can't be doing their own thing. You know what I mean? And so one of the gifts and the curses about this defensive front is you have 4 guys that all have the ability at some point to take over a game. But at the same token, you can't really plan for all those guys to kind of have the flexibility to get off script sometimes, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So when I was playing, Rack was that guy, right? He had a little bit more leash. If he saw something, if he took a move, we understood, Rack had that freedom to lose contain or to stay outside, and then, we would play off of him. But when you got other guys that, with the production that they've had and the pedigree that they have, it kind of sometimes maybe put them in a bad situation, and sometimes quarterbacks were able to get out and so on and so forth. But, at the end of the day, with as dominant as this defensive line is, I would always say, can we really expect them in order to win a game to get 8 or 9 sacks a game? You know what I mean? If you look through the history of when this defense was playing good, when we were winning games, the defensive line was dominant. I just didn't think it was sustainable week in and week out when you start playing against some of the better offenses in this league. And in actuality, for as dominant as you can be, unless the team puts the opposing team's offense in obvious passing situations, you can pretty much eliminate the defensive line. You know what I mean? And you look at quick game, the screen game, so on and so forth. So for as great as that group has played at times, especially the interior guys, and Sweat's having a great year, and Chase Young just seeming to be healthy, looking like his old self, it's still the ultimate team game. You know what I mean? And so the defensive line, to a certain extent, depends on coverage, depends on the offense to be able to put points on the board. But that being said, that's a long way around saying, when you dedicate that many resources to a front, to a defense, in the secondary, in the linebackers from a draft perspective, from a money perspective, they have to play better than they've been playing. There's really no excuse.
Yeah, Kendrick Golston is with us, of course, a long-time NFL defensive lineman here in Washington on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. I'd love for you to speak a little bit more to what it's like to play against or play alongside someone like a Chase, in your case, a Brian Arakpo, as your career went on, like Ryan Kerrigan, guys that were those playmakers that had that license. Like, what's it like to be the next guy over, the one who's responsible for making that guy right, doing the dirty work, the stuff that doesn't get the attention, and why that's so important to making a defense function?
Well, I just think it goes to understanding that, if you don't give those guys that flexibility, then it's easy for an offensive lineman to get in rhythm to block them. You know what I mean? Like if you're doing the same rush at the same speed, the same tempo, offensive linemen in this league, especially the good ones, they study that. They know when you want to turn the corner. They know when you want to come out, make an inside move. They know when you're going to spin. And so you have to be able to mix up your routine enough to keep them off balance as well. And it's not like you're actually waiting on him to do something that he normally doesn't do. It's just one of those things where when you see it or you feel it, you cover them. You know what I mean? You don't second guess it because that's when we talk about that chemistry and we talk about playing with one another, right? It's not necessarily you're waiting or I'm not rushing as hard as I can, but ultimately if I see him flash across my face, I know he made an inside move, so I'm going to cover him. Or if he stays high, meaning he might rush back behind the quarterback, I might go into more of a power rush to be able to clog that up, knowing that he's trying to turn the corner to get a strip sack. So it's not like a burden per se, but ultimately it has to be an understanding that, sometimes you might have to take a back seat to guys like that, rightfully so, because ultimately those guys, Rackpole, Kerrigan, all Pro Bowl players, they were guys that would get after the passer at a high level. So you want to be able to accentuate those talents, but also protect the defense in the process.
So for Washington now, their stud type of guys are the interior too. It's John and Duran. How does that kind of work when traditionally we're used to seeing like, hey, D tackles got to do the dirty work, they got to cover, they got to do all this stuff, and it's the edge guys that get the sacks. For Washington, they're not built that way. So how does that change the dynamic?
Well, I think it's just one of those things where, if you just think back to this year or when Sweat was out last year, I mean, not Sweat, but Young was out last year, just those guys being where they're supposed to be. The one thing that we do know is we do get a great interior push by Allen and Payne, right? And so sometimes that quarterback just, retreats out of the pocket and steps right up into a sack from a defensive end. It's when that defensive end with the inside penetration takes an inside move, and now that quarterback is able to get outside the pocket. That being said, these guys have seemed to, play really, really well as a unit. Whether it was Sweat out with injury or Chase out with injury. So that doesn't, obviously you don't want to lose that type of talent, but at the end of the day, the group, I believe, has proven that they can still go out there and play at a high level, without those guys in the fold. That being said, you hate to see them go. You understand that's the business side of it. But, on the flip side of that, I think Chase is in a great situation getting with the 49ers. You know what I mean? Being paired up with Bosa, being a part of that, kind of star-studded cast that they have out there, being able to practice against Trent Williams every single day, looking at how Bosa, how he prepares, how that defensive group goes about their business. I think, he's going to make leaps and bounds just from being in that culture that they now have, and he's not the guy coming to save it. He's the guy that's coming to be a part of it and to be able to learn from those guys or what it looks like. So I'm super excited for him. And the fact of the matter, I think it's a win-win for both, right? Washington knew they wasn't going to re-sign him. He gets to go to an organization that is defense is playing at a high level. I know they're on a little bit of a skid, but that defense over the last 2 or 3 years has been playing lights out. And so for him to get around those guys, to be able to learn and continue to grow as a professional, I think it's a win-win for both parties.
No, I agree with you. And Kendrick Golston's with us for a few more minutes here on the Hoffman Show. But at the same time, like that reality is so frustrating because it's like, well, what do they have that this team couldn't figure out here? Like, why is it that the culture is better for him there because he is such a great talent. And I think there's probably with him in particular in this situation, like there is a geography element where he's home and that can come with a certain litany of expectations. And he's the number 2 pick here. Like that kind of gets shed as a reputation when he goes there. He's just the new guy who's got to get in line behind Bosa and everybody else. But like when you look at situations with extremely talented players that don't work out, how do you think about the split of responsibility of it not working between the player and whatever he may or may not have done and the organization to not foster that talent in a way that it ultimately shines?
It's just one of those things that like it's so simple but yet so complicated. You know what I mean? I mean, I was there when Robert was there, and you've been around this business a long time. If you're producing at a high level on the field, there's a lot of stuff that people put up with, right?
Oh, yeah.
But when your production starts to decrease, then there's a bunch of things that now get on people's nerves. And so I don't want to speculate about Chase. I mean, but it was kind of like a slow boil, right? So he has the great rookie season, and then he doesn't show up for the off-season workouts, right? And he makes some comments that rub some people the wrong way, and then he gets injured, and then he doesn't rehab there. And he has that right because it's all voluntary. But at the end of the day, I think obviously the coaching staff and the front office didn't appreciate that. And so I just think it was one of those things, like you said, him being here at home, with the distractions that come with playing, for the city that you grew up in and so on and so forth. So, I believe that, you think with the second pick of the draft, they put every resource possible they could have for him to go out there and succeed, right? So I think at the end of the day, for both parties, they kind of need to accept responsibility and looking themselves in the mirror. For Chase, I wouldn't blame anything on the Commanders. I would look and see what could I have done, and from the Commanders' perspective, to say, hey, if we get a player like this or any player, what could we have done better to ultimately not try to be right or wrong, but to get the most out of this player so he could help our organization, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day,
100%.
coaches should coach in order to put their players in the best situation so that their players can go out there and play at a high level. And from a player's perspective, take all the blame. What could I control and what could I have done differently? And that's why I think, you think about why didn't Chris Carter work out in Philadelphia? You know what I'm saying? So it's just one of those things where it's not necessarily new, but sometimes a change of scenery. Sometimes now I think one of the main things is he's not the second overall pick anymore. He's a guy who has to go to a new organization that has been in NFC championship games, has another perennial a defensive player of the year candidate. You know what I mean? And so I think that's good for him. I think one of the main things, I think when the Commanders or the Washington football team didn't re-sign Kerrigan, after Chase's second year, in my opinion, I think that set him back from a developmental standpoint. Because now you had 2 young guys in the room versus a guy, say what you want to about Kerrigan. I know he's on the staff now, but it was a guy that you could lock him in for 10, 11 sacks a year and was just a quiet assassin. And if we would have been better as an organization, this guy would have been, on every billboard around because that's the type of player that he was. So I think putting him with other guys that, 1, he respects, 2, that he can learn from, because not only do they seem to be professional off the field, but on the field playing at a high level, I think he's going to grow for me. You know what I mean? And so I think especially, and I'm not going to say the modern athlete, but, back when I played, you told players what to do and they were expected to do it. Now it's a little bit more, you have to communicate. You have to be able to explain the why. You have to be able to let them know, hey, I need you to do this because not only is it a benefit to you, but it's a benefit to your teammates and it's a benefit to this organization. Whether you like that or not doesn't matter. That's just the reality of where we're at in sports and pretty much in life.
No, that's incredibly well put, and I'll even add to that too. Like, because of the way the salary cap is now, there aren't a lot of Kendrick Golstons around. There aren't a lot of Lorenzo Alexanders around, and not necessarily Zoe when he was here, although to an extent. But like Zoe in Buffalo, the veterans are just not there. Like I'm trying to think. The oldest guy in the Commanders' locker room is probably Tress. Like I'm probably missing someone. Maybe Leno. Like, but there just aren't the guys that are in one place or in any place in the league for 12 years anymore, unless they're the star of stars. And so those veteran mentors are just not on teams in the way that they used to. And I think that probably, along with what you're saying, like makes that more problematic than it would just be a thing that is easily dealt with amongst teammates, where coaches have to get more involved, and there's not kind of a leadership hierarchy. There's a leadership cliff between coaches and players.
Yeah, because ultimately, like, whether, young players, obviously, like, sometimes if you don't like what the coach is saying, you don't like what he's saying because you don't understand what he's saying. But a teammate in the locker room, away from the emotion of that situation, could tell you the exact same thing, but you hear it differently because it's coming from a different person, right? And your guard is off. And so I'm in total agreement with you. Like you said, based off of the salary cap, but, guys like that can still go out there, what you call your glue guys, right? They're able to, and people say they're good for the culture. No, they're good for a lot of stuff, because what we're dealing with is human beings. We're dealing with young men that are super talented, right? For a lot of people, this is the first time Chase probably faced any adversity ever in his football career. Was his second year when he got injured. Up until that, he was always the man. He was the man at the Master. He was the man at Ohio State. He was the man as a rookie here, right? And so to be able to have to go through those situations for the whole world to see is tough for a young person to handle. And I'm not making excuses, right, because he's an adult and he get paid a lot of money, right, to play a kid's game. But that being said, we all, if we're honest, need people in our lives to help coast us through the difficult times and the good times so that we're better people for it.
100%. Kedrick Golston with us here on the Hoffman Show. Ked, always appreciate your time, sir. Much appreciated today on a busy week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Have a good one.
All right, that's Kedrick Golston, everybody. Dropping sage, wise wisdom. Anthony, I just feel better about life right now. That's what happens when I talk to Kedrick. I need to talk to Kedrick every day.
That's what happens when you talk to a guy that's played the game. I mean, well, you do that like 3 times a week.
Yeah, I do
times.
with Logan, but Ked is a different soul.
Yeah.
Logan is very analytical. The more I work with Logan, the more I understand Logan and some of his perspectives and why he says things. And I agree with most of it. I think anyone that listens to our stuff knows, one, the respect I have for Logan and how much time he puts in and how hard he works, and how hard he worked to have the career he did. Logan would be the first one to tell you he had no business having a 10-year NFL career. That dude was, physically speaking, extremely untalented by NFL standards. Way more athletic, way more talented than 99% of the population, but at the top 1%, he was in the bottom 1%, and he would be the first person to tell you. Yeah. But he worked his ass off to get it, and because of that, he is very mission driven on so many things. Where you got a guy like Kedrick who also had to do a lot of the same grinding and whatever. Ked obviously was gifted with a body that was built to play this position that he did, and made a almost 15-year career. I think it was 13 years in the league out of it. But there's something about Ked and Zoe. I mean, and they're great friends. But getting to know those two men over the years, there's just something about the soul of them and the way they think about life in a much bigger thing that someone like Logan is just I got to figure out the angle to block this 5 technique. And Ked's we got to talk about this larger stuff. And it's funny because Logan and I have had some of those conversations sometimes about the human side of it. And he'll tell you the way I think about this stuff, and conversations that he's had with guys like Kedrick over the years have also informed him and reminded him at times to not think as much about the angle and the 5 technique, but think about the human side of it as well, especially as he's gotten into the analyst work and he no longer has to block the 5 technique. All right, when we get back here on the Hoffman Show, quick couple thoughts on the Wizards. Or, Anthony, are we screwed on that? It's now 4:50. What should we do here?
That's a great question, Craig.
Quick break. We're going to take a 20-second timeout and come back and do basketball. See, I did a basketball analogy. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. So we got up on the TV right now. I don't have time to get my actual Wizard stuff right now, so we're going to do fake Wizard stuff, if you will. So every day right now on the TVs in here, Monumental Sports Network is on. Just because that's what's on. Like, I guess people were watching games or whatever. I don't really ever adjust the channel unless there's like a live game on that I want to watch. So I've just been leaving it on. And they've got their new afternoon programming. So they have Rachel Nichols' show, and I've watched Will Dawkins and Michael Winger and Wes Unseld Jr. now eat crabs at Ivy City Smokehouse like 4 days in a row, which is always kind of funny. Right now, I got DJ Heat and my guy Wes Hall rocking out on Wizards Media Day on, I think it's called Beyond the Buzzer, Wes's show. But there was a point earlier in the show where, Anthony, did you happen to catch the outfit that Wes was wearing?
Not earlier.
Okay, so he's got like a nice classic suit with a white T-shirt on underneath in that scene. But actually, they're doing a feature on the DMV Music Portal, which is what we have, what we use for our Dave Johnson intro. If you missed that the other day, but Wes was wearing like this bright red sweater, button down underneath, like white button down, and he definitely had it tucked in. And I was like, "That's okay. Good job, Mr. Rogers."
Wow. I don't know. I'm not.
I feel like you could rock that look.
I could, but
it'd be very Georgetown prep of you.
Yeah.
No.
I would definitely. I don't know. I would probably have the white tee out. Was it tucked in?
So like it was a white collared shirt, like a button down with a bright red sweater over it.
Yeah.
With the collar out, and then it looked like it was tucked into his jeans.
Oh yeah, I can't do the. See, I would have tucked it out.
It might have been tucked out. In fairness to Wes, it might have just been like kind of where the sweater was hitting that it looked like it was tucked in.
Yeah, I think when you tuck it in, you're looking too professional. I like to be swagged out a little bit, you know.
Yeah. I texted him and I was like, that's a cute Mr. Rogers look you got going on there.
The sweater. And he said he's here to set the mood. I guess the mood is education and kindness. Are you a sweater guy?
I actually do love a sweater. Not so much with the collar underneath.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But I do love a sweater. I got some pretty good sweaters.
Okay.
Maybe I'll wear one next week.
All right. It is getting cool.
It is. I hate it.
I do too.
It was legitimately 80 degrees a week ago.
It was. Last Friday, actually.
Last night, there was a freeze warning. We're at the high temperature today. It's 52. And it's going to be 70 on Tuesday. And then a cold front comes through, and it literally Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday next week is 70, 64, 65, 50 as highs.
Global warming.
That's why we call it climate change, kids. It's not all warm and fuzzy.
No.
And think about the polar bears. Kevin Sheehan's next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Our NFL tiers coming up at 5:30. Any more teams that either get into or drop out of the prime contender category? We had some movement last week. What do we got this week? You find out in just over half an hour from right now, but 5 o'clock means it's time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
Today, we welcome in our friend and colleague, Kevin Sheehan, host of the Kevin Sheehan Show here on the Team 980, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Kevin, how are you, sir?
What's up, Craig? How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. It's been a busy week. I don't know if you heard, there's stuff happening.
Yeah, it was a busy week. It was actually a little bit of a surprising week. I don't think any of us had both of them being traded.
Yeah, I definitely didn't have that as the favorite. Although I can't say I'm terribly surprised, all things considered, considering the markets for both and the fact that one, seems like they would have accepted just about anything, and the other, they got what they got. Like, it makes sense at the end for me. I haven't had a chance to tune in. We're moving this week, so not the greatest for listening to a bunch of stuff, but where have you landed on it for folks that, maybe work during your show and haven't heard kind of the high-level thoughts on the deals?
No, I mean, I think that, the Sweat trade is, probably not necessarily was their first choice to move them, but I think we all heard they got an offer that was, probably close to the end of the first round when all is said and done with Chicago's second-round pick. And clearly they wanted to move Chase, and what they got back for him. I understand completely everybody's frustration because you go back to 2020 and he was the number 2 pick in the draft and he was the defensive rookie of the year, and it just seems like a very disappointing ending, and looks really now like one of the all-time franchise draft busts. I mean, it's top 5. All time, after moving him on Tuesday. But, I think it was a decent football day. I just was not overly thrilled or very impressed with the anonymous leaks about Chase Young that followed. I thought that was, that reeked of kind of Dan and Bruce low rent stuff. But other than that, it was, a decent football day.
So, I don't know. Like, I guess I come at that as a reporter, and I want people to tell me stuff, and that part of my job description, I'm always we'll go back on that because I could see myself as the reporter who published that stuff. Like, you always want to be diligent, especially when it's negative about a young person, which Chase at 24 still is. But at the same time, if this stuff is true, I think the bigger problem is that it's true, not necessarily that it gets out.
I think you misunderstood me.
Yeah.
I have no problem with the reporters reporting it. I have a problem with people inside that organization, likely from the coaching staff, kind of kicking him on the way out. I mean, they had 3.5 years to confront him, and I'm not debating whether or not it's true. In fact, I think probably all of it's true.
Right.
We've all been hearing for 2 years, that it's been a difficult time with him. But kind of the, addition by subtraction, the stuff that, Mike Silver, I don't have any problem with Ben or Mike Silver or anybody else writing it. I have a problem with the team leaking it.
Yeah, I hear you. I also did, we can be adults here. Like, Mike Silver and Ron Rivera have known each other since college. Like, I thought it was incredibly bizarre that Ron, kind of acted like he was super upset and angry that it got out yesterday.
Yeah, not exactly. It certainly didn't come off as completely forthright.
Yeah. So there's that part. It does speak to a larger issue that I'm curious your take on, and it's a thing that we've spent some time on over the last 24 hours or so, which is, it doesn't work. Part of that is on Chase. Part of that is on the organization. How do you kind of divide up the responsibility for having this talent that everybody agrees is super talented, but and by the way, that it could very well flourish in an environment like San Francisco, and the inability to create that environment here?
Yeah, it's a really good question as to what happened. I mean, I think, you certainly can't take the player off the hook. I mean, this has been, going back to the end of his rookie year, there were moments where we know why they were frustrated. He was one of only 90 players that didn't show up for an OTA day, not even one. I mean, it would have been fine had he shown up for one or two. Nobody would have said anything. Coaches would have been fine, but he had the C on his jersey, and he didn't post for one. And a lot of this is on the player, of course. But I also look at it, Craig, as, maybe they should have coached him better. Maybe this was a player that didn't fit into, a very rigid scheme, adhering to, the scheme, being super, beholden to what the play was. Maybe, Bill Parcells never said Lawrence Taylor was easy to coach. I'm not comparing them. Trust me. I'm just saying that sometimes you have a talent that you have to adjust to a little bit. And maybe ultimately the talent wasn't transformational or generational, which we thought it was at the time. And maybe that would be their answer back on that. But the one thing that I think is frustrating in hindsight is that they were clearly frustrated all along. And everything that they leaked and just dealing him for basically a fourth-round pick for all intents and purposes tells you just how badly they wanted to rid themselves of him. And I wonder why that at any point they weren't tough with him. Why they didn't bench him. I mean, Emmanuel Forbes got benched, in the first 5 games. If he was really difficult to coach, maybe they should have been tougher with him.
Yeah, it's a tough question because I
think
it is
because we don't have enough information.
Yeah, and I mean, do you risk embarrassing a guy who's got that kind of star power? Like, what does it say? I think there's probably some of that, and I do think that there's a bit of like. It's so funny when people talk about an old school mentality. So much of old school mentality often is just like protecting people. And instead of like really being confrontational, it's like, oh, it all stays in house. I think sometimes for a guy, especially the modern athlete who grew up in kind of the social media age, and I've said this before, like for me, I grew up watching SportsCenter. Like so anybody that's like my age, if you're thinking of what kind of behavior you want to avoid, it's being on SportsCenter for the wrong reasons. And so if that's kind of some of the motivation, I do wonder if there's even to a point a generational disconnect in how they may have tried to discipline or punish him or keep him in line or coach him hard, and the way he actually received any of that information. I don't know that anyone will ever talk about it to the length that we are talking about it here and would love to know, but I sure as hell would love to find out.
No, I think I know what you're saying. I mean, it's very possible that there were other ways to get through, and maybe they weren't as open-minded to those ways, and as flexible to those ways. And it is different now. Coaches tell you it's different now. And look, in college now, it's a lot different because basically they have annual free agency. So you have to coach them and treat them in a way that makes, that ensures that you don't lose them 6 months after, they play for you for the first time. So yeah, it's different. But I don't think anybody should take him off the hook either. It's not like he is a child. He's 24 years old. He's a young player, and I'm rooting for him to succeed at some point because I was so high on him coming out of Ohio State. I thought we were looking at generational kind of talent. And the rookie year, the end of the rookie year, he made game-changing plays. And the injury, I'm sure, had a lot to do with it, but there's a lot of other stuff that maybe we'll never even hear was a part of it. And it probably includes him growing up and being a little bit more mature.
Kevin Sheehan with us here on the Hoffman Show. So now the rest of this season, as if it wasn't already, but more definitively becomes about Sam Howell and his development. Like if we take this as the halfway point, 8 games in, what do you think of the job they have done developing him so far?
You mean you're not looking at the schedule, figuring out how they can get 6 wins in their last 9 games to go 9-8? And snag the 7th seed? Come on, Craig. It's not over yet.
I mean that can. Well, I think actually, like all snarkiness aside, the idea that like people think that you have to make a choice is ridiculous. Like it's actually a gigantic pet peeve of mine is that people think that you can't both develop a quarterback and win at the same time. Like the whole point of a game plan isn't to set up your quarterback to succeed. You know?
I thought you were talking about the choice of 9 and 8, 7 seed, or lose
Oh,
out
yeah.
and have a really high draft choice.
That also doesn't matter to me, but
Yeah,
yes.
I loved what I saw last week. It was the most impressed I've been by everything that they've done. And they didn't win, and it didn't end well necessarily. But, the first 45, pass play calls in the game before, say the last 2 or 3 series, I just thought it was really impressive. I think I may have mentioned this to you or Logan at some point, but and I know I've mentioned it on my show many times, but his offensive coordinator, Phil Longo at UNC, I mean, I've had him on the show probably 3 times in the last year and a half. And each time he would say he's got to be in an offense that's West Coast, that is quick, get the ball out of his hands. Like, they knew at North Carolina, he's not a set-up 5-step, 7-step, wait for longer developing plays downfield, that's not what he was ready for. And I think what we saw just in the first 4 drives of the game Sunday was a way to get him confident. It was a way to get the offense moving. It was a way to frustrate the defense a little bit, and it just all ended up kind of coming together. So I hope we continue to see that. I mean, every team's going to play them differently. And I think one of the things we've learned about Philadelphia this year, they don't run well in their secondary. I think their secondary is big in name, but not necessarily performance. And in 2 games, Washington had their way with them throwing the football for the most part. But I loved last week. There's a lot to be encouraged about as it relates to Sam Howell, but there are still, significant concerns. And we have 9 more games just this year to kind of watch it. And I hope we get to see him in all 9. I think we will.
Yeah, definitely. As long as he can stay healthy, I wouldn't see why not, but we'll see with the amount of sacks that he's taken. I feel like last week, Kevin, the game plan was also so, maybe not so different, but definitively different. Like, they really did do the stuff that you just talked about. They got the ball out of his hands quickly. It had to be the most screens they ran in any game. And I know it also is an offense that is effective against what Philadelphia does. But my questions are about Bieniemy and his ability to keep that kind of game plan moving forward. And I where is your confidence level in his willingness to do that? Because it's not an ability; it's a willingness to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were, again, I think it might have been with Logan, but we were talking about just, hopefully there isn't a stubbornness there, and there's more of an understanding. I think we have to this is 8 games with a quarterback in a brand new system who's never played in the NFL before, and with a coordinator who's admitted that he is very much in the process of learning, even though he's been an offensive coordinator, but never with this much responsibility. And I think that it's a process, and we have to sit back and let it play out, because I think even at the beginning of the year, any reasonable person would say it'll probably be a roller coaster. There will be some weeks that it'll look good. There will be some weeks that it won't. And, you just have to wait. And hopefully by as you approach the second half of the year or the final quarter of the season, it really starts to come together. And then you can say, all right, these are our guys. So that's kind of my position. But it's been a roller coaster. I mean, the Arizona game was ugly. The Denver game was pretty good. The Buffalo game was hideous. The 2 Philadelphia games, great. The Giants game, god-awful. The Falcons game, good for a half, not so good for the other half. The Bears game, kind of, awful first half. So it's been up and down, and I would expect it to be that way for a few more weeks. But maybe it was a much different game plan than the one against the Giants. I mean, there were 14 5-step or more dropbacks in the first half. We had only those on 1st and 10 play action with, medium to max protect. And that was to take a shot after they had already gotten the quick game going. So I loved it on Sunday. I hope we continue to see it. If it makes sense against the defenses that they face, sometimes it won't. And they even ran the ball better last week. Not a lot. He doesn't run it a lot. But I think, Philadelphia was a little bit off balance. for much of the day.
No doubt. The threat of running it was there. It's funny you mentioned the defenses that they face. That could be interpreted as the rest of the season, or it could be interpreted as Sunday, because the Lord knows what Belichick will do. And
Exactly.
he destroys young quarterbacks, and it's in part because he confuses the hell out of him. I have no idea what to expect Sunday. Do you have any early leanings on how that thing goes?
No, it's just good that some of their better players aren't going to be playing, but I actually think this is a great opportunity. It's like he's going to try to confuse a young quarterback, and by the way, an inexperienced full-time, play caller. And so these are the kinds of experiences they want to go through the rest of the way. You get that, and then the next week you're going to play in the most difficult, you could say, road environment in the league against a team that's pretty good. You get, San Francisco later in the year, the Jets later in the year. So all of these experiences hopefully will add up to something at the end of the year that we, have a more definitive opinion, because I don't have, a definitive opinion on either at this point, Bieniemy or Howell. But it's encouraging, certainly on Sam Howell.
Yeah, I agree. And I think people are in a rush to want to know, because certainty feels better, even if you're certain that it's not it. But let's say for a second they don't have to worry about drafting a quarterback, that whatever the threshold is that we're looking for, they reach it. How are you approaching the 2024 draft now with the picks that they have? Like, you got a great eye on college football as well as the NFL. So is there anything in particular in terms of draft strategy that you're thinking about this far ahead, guys that you like, positions that you're high on, knowing what this team is going to need this offseason?
Well, I think watching 8 games this year, we know what they need. They need an offense. They need offensive line help for sure. And I think they wanted to draft that. I think they wanted to draft the kid from Tennessee, and I think they would have had he reached them. But really, by the time they picked Craig, remember, almost all of the best offensive linemen were gone. I think that the quarterback issue is going to be a big issue, but wouldn't it be great to be able to draft, the kid from Notre Dame who's at the top of everybody's board, the tackle, forgetting his name now, him. Wouldn't it be great to have a chance, at another, at this point, maybe a pass rusher? I think a pass rusher will be in need as you approach the draft, but I haven't given a lot of thought to it. But O-line, pass rush, and of course, I'm not discounting the possibility that they're going to need a quarterback when we get there.
So let's go full circle then and kind of wrap up in a way where we started. We started off talking about Chase and the pressure and all those kinds of things. Let's say for a second, and now it's the part where everybody riots, because I'm going to say, let's say for a second Sam Howell doesn't work out and they draft a quarterback in the first round next year. What are the things that this team has so miserably failed at in the past with high pressure players, right? Prospects that have a lot of intensity in terms of expectations on them, that they need to make sure is shored up under this new ownership so that player, assuming it's a quarterback, can succeed?
I'm not following the question. Sorry.
So, you think of the most hyped players they've had over the last 15, 20 years. Robert didn't work out. Dwayne didn't work out.
Well,
Chase didn't work out. So, how do they create an organizational structure so that the next guy, if it's a quarterback especially.
The owner shouldn't be making the pick. So let's start
that
there.
does help. That does help.
Yeah, that helps a lot because, the 3 players that we've Robert, Dwayne, and even Chase to a certain degree, remember how badly the owner wanted a local player. Let me just tell you, Craig, as somebody who lived through the glory years, none of the championship teams had local players on it. Nobody cared. Riggo was from Kansas, Theismann from New Jersey, Dexter from Texas. Nobody cares about where these players played high school football. But anyway, enough on the old days. They need a really good football person. That's the first thing when this season ends. I would assume that they're working on it already. Then you need a really good coach, and then you need a really good draft strategy. But in terms of, steering clear of things that haven't worked, I think, the number one reason that a lot of these guys didn't work is out of the building, and hopefully all attached remnants to that owner, will be gone by the time we get to mid to late January as well.
Fair enough. Kevin Sheehan, host of the Kevin Sheehan Show, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. here on the Team 980. You can also check out the Kevin Sheehan Show podcast. I know you had Lavero on, as you do every week, talking about these trades recently, and Logan's on there sometimes. I'm still waiting for my call, Kevin, but it's okay. I'll wait patiently.
I will call you, I promise.
Okay. I have faith. And by the way, we're definitely going to start having you on to talk a little basketball, not necessarily today, but it is hoop season, which makes both of us very happy.
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't have much of a pro team, but I think the Terps will be pretty good this year.
Yeah, we can talk about them, and we can talk about other pro teams, and then be like, oh, yeah, the internal metrics on the Wizards are the same as they ever were. All right, that's Kevin Sheehan. You'll hear him tomorrow right here at 10 a.m. Thanks, Kevin. See you. Right. And then Kevin's, of course, also with us on Sundays. He's with us 10:30 a.m. On the Take Command pregame show. Myself, Logan Paulson, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. That's the same time Kevin's on during the week. We have it on Sundays, getting you ready for each and every Commanders game live from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor. When we get back, Anthony and I take a look at the NFL and power rank, basically 1 to 32, except for we don't do it actually 1 to 32. We do it in groups. Who belongs in what neighborhood? That is how we break it up. Our NFL tiers are next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at 6 o'clock, I got something I've been chewing on all day. Get that off my chest. Looking forward to that. What else we got today, Anthony? I still didn't really get the Wizards stuff that I was going to do earlier in. What are we doing at 6:15 and 6:30? I should know if I had the rundown up.
Got some Wizards, and then yeah.
Oh, look.
A preview of.
Hold on. I just pulled up the rundown to make sure that we had our stuff. Anthony, there's no rundown for today. Whose responsibility is that?
That's a great question, Craig.
Is that a 15-pointer?
Oh
to just
my
straight up
gosh.
not have a rundown?
I just feel as though the show was a little, I don't know.
We were putting it together as the day went,
Yeah, we were putting it together as the day went.
but it's like there's a process in place.
There's stuff in the sheet.
The sheet. So to peel back the curtain all the way here, we have a Google sheet that is just a segment by segment, very simple. Like it literally says like sound bites, right? So like that is, so it's got 4:15, 4:30, all the way down. I don't know if y'all have noticed, we do a segment every 15 minutes. Sometimes we double up and we jam two segments into one. Like we just went long on our interview with Kevin, which is fine, and that was planned. But we have a sheet, and then we have an actual rundown where, like, we take notes. And for instance, in the section that's like our NFL tiers section, I have the what we did last week. That way we don't have to go look up the standings and whatever and try to place teams. And we have a reference point because after we do them the first time, it really is about debating and moving the teams around. And Anthony just straight up didn't do that part of the show today. So if I had wanted to type out my rant or some bullet points, or I had questions I wanted to write down for Kevin, I didn't have a place to do it. What level fine should that be? 5, 10, or 15?
I think it warrants
That seems pretty personal foul to me.
because of the tiers.
Because there's no rundown.
Okay.
You can't be relying on the fact that I remember stuff, because sometimes I forget.
And then I remember.
That doesn't help me if I'm in the middle of the show and I got to ask you. That's the whole point. I might not use the rundown on a given day, but I need it to be there when I need it.
Yeah, today was one of those days I didn't think you was going to use the rundown.
On a day with a segment where we always use the rundown.
Pretty much.
If that's not 15,
That's 10.
I'll give you 10. I guess 15 is saved for like really egregious, like cussing on the air or doing something really bad. But then at that point, I don't think we're dealing with our silly fine system.
How much was the not starting the stream fine?
That was a 10. But I also remembered instantly.
Yeah, you didn't give me a chance. Usually I have it up so I can listen to the beginning. Because sometimes I tell you the audio is down.
That's true. I'll keep it at 10.
Thank you.
And may God have mercy on your soul.
I'm piling up the points fast.
You are. We literally started a new one this week.
On like Tuesday.
You actually, I think you...
Actually, it was Monday because we had to come in and correct some stuff from last Friday.
Yeah,
Well, I
and
picked
you've
up
already got
like 40 or 30.
25
Good gracious.
points. No, that's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 points. Which means our total is 40, and we are almost halfway to another lunch, almost all the way on the back
Of yours truly.
of Anthony Haney.
Yeah.
There's the fine board. There's all of Anthony's points. Damn, bro. Not good. Not good. Luckily, while we were scolding Anthony, we were able to find the tiers, and now we rank the football teams. All right. 4 categories: prime contenders, puncher's chance, interesting but not quite good enough, no chance. And this is to wind up in the Super Bowl as the winner of their conference. That is how we define these, just so we have a clear and concise way to measure. Prime contenders as of last week are the Miami Dolphins, San Francisco 49ers, Kansas City Chiefs, Philadelphia Eagles, and Baltimore Ravens. Are there any teams that we would like to drop out of this category?
I thought about the 49ers.
I think you have to think about the 49ers.
I thought about it. That's the thing. The key word is I thought, and I still cannot bring myself to it yet.
I am with you. And I am biased here because I like being right. And I have picked the San Francisco 49ers to win the Super Bowl.
Oh, so you're doing this for your own personal reasons.
So no, it's not personal reasons. Well, these rankings don't mean anything. It's not like, if they're here, they're going to help win.
You said for the sake of being right.
No, I'm just telling you I'm coming at this with a bias that I am going to be inclined to keep them up there because I want to keep hope alive that I'm going to be right. And I need to check myself and really ask the question, is this a prime contending team? And my answer is still yes, because there is time to figure it out. And unlike the Bills, who we knocked down last week to puncher's chance, there hasn't been any permanent long-term injury. They still have time to figure it out. They just added Chase Young, who we all think is probably going to elevate them on some level. But at the end of the day, they've had some injuries short-term that have hurt them. But I think as Brock gets back into the mix, Kyle has a chance to mix some things up. He gets McCaffrey back. He gets Debo back. Kittle's still there. Ayuk is still there. Trent gets back and gets healthier, hopefully, based off, no one really gets healthier during a season. But when you have an acute injury, that injury heals and you get back to a better level. And then defensively, they still got their dudes. So I think San Francisco's got one more week. If they play like dog doo-doo again this week, we got to drop them out. And that doesn't mean they're out permanently. They could get back in it if they figure it out. But I think we owe them one more week due to injury and the fact that, unlike Buffalo, they're not fundamentally changed for the long term.
Yeah, I think the 49ers bye couldn't have come at a more perfect time than now. Because, again, as you alluded to, they sort of kind of get to reset, get healthy, and hopefully, again, I think they go as their defense goes, and their defense really hasn't been as dominant as in years past we've seen it be. So that's the only thing I would say. I would love for their defense, because I think a lot of people are putting a lot more on Purdy for him to go out there and put up these crazy numbers, even though, in the playoffs last year he did look good. But, again,
he's not scared, man. The thing is, Kyle knows what to ask him to do and what not to ask him to do.
Mm-hmm.
And Brock's really good at the stuff that he's asked to do, which is how coaching's supposed to work.
Yeah. So their defense get back to, balling out. All right. But they got a bye week, so we'll see.
All right. Any other team that needs to be considered? I don't think so. The Dolphins won. The Chiefs had a bad week, but Mahomes had the flu. I don't think we're seriously considering dropping them out.
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
Eagles, they're the only 7-1 team in the league, and the Ravens continue to make things happen.
What's the Ravens record?
The Ravens are 6-2.
Oh, yeah. They did lose 2 games. Yep. Steelers and Colts.
Yep. So that then leaves the question of, is anybody eligible to bump up? And there's 2 more 6-2 teams. And there's one team whose record says they don't belong, but I think we should consider. We'll get to that next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 and always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We have no more playoff baseball. That's because the Rangers have won the World Series. First championship in team history sealed up last night, as predicted on this show yesterday by our friend Clinton Yates. 4-1, the gentleman's sweep in Arizona. Again, the first World Series in Texas Rangers history. NFL preparing to play in Germany for the first time. this weekend. Dolphins and Chiefs going to get going. Of course, Tyreek Hill, his first matchup against his former team. He took to the podium today and said the Chiefs, they can get this work. It'll be a fun reunion between those two of the best offenses in terms of firepower in the league, although one, Miami, is actually firing, and the Chiefs have struggled. Another fun tidbit from Hill today, when asked about the scramble rules for Mahomes and what he's telling his Dolphins defensive teammates, said there's a whole PowerPoint presentation on what you're supposed to do when Patrick starts to scramble, but in terms of what you need to know now, just find Kelsey. Don't let that guy get the ball. That's what's trending. I'm Craig Hoffman on the team 980. Yes, Anthony, you can add this to the regular rotation. Just saying. Jot it down.
You like this song?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Just what does analytics mean and how is it actually used in the NFL? I'm tired of people telling on themselves that they don't understand the answers to those questions. So whether you're pro analytics or you're anti-analytics or you're neutral to analytics, you're analytics curious, stay tuned for 6 o'clock. You're gonna want to hear this one. Take some calls on that at 6:15, 6:30. Maybe talk a little Wizards. Although I think we had something else. Wizards 6:30. Anthony,
Wizards or preview of Thursday Night Football?
Who's playing tonight?
Steelers versus
Oh, that's right. It's because Matt Canada's calling plays from the sidelines.
Titans.
Yeah.
Steelers Titans.
I think we'll probably talk about the Wizards and not talk about Steelers Titans.
Yep.
We'd like to keep the audience.
Yeah.
Steelers Titans not doing it for me. Or frankly anyone else. Okay, two teams that are going to not wind up very high in our power rankings as we get to power rankings part 2 here, our tiers. So in the puncher's chance, again, it's prime contenders, puncher's chance, interesting but not quite good enough, and no chance. We have the Lions, Bills, Cowboys, Jags, Bengals, and Browns in the puncher's chance category. The Lions are 6-2. They bounced back greatly from their beatdown at the Ravens. And the Jags are also now 6-2. Does either team merit consideration in prime contender category? In other words, if either of those teams makes the Super Bowl, would you be surprised based off what you've seen?
Again, I wouldn't be surprised because that's why they're here at puncher's chance. But I will say the Jags and the Lions, they've been rolling since the end of last year, to be honest.
That's the thing, is like they've been really good teams. The Lions just missed the playoffs because they started so badly. But at the end of the day, like, they're really good, man. And the NFC is not loaded.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's not enough big names on their teams. Maybe it's, I don't know. They just play good team football, like, all the way around, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, they're a top 10 offense. They're a top 10 defense.
Yeah.
Like, what more do you want from them? And I guess it's consistency. And, points per game, they're a little lower down in defense. But yardage-wise, they're top 10. They're kind of middle of the pack. But they're giving up 20 a game. Like, it's not like it's a bad number. I don't know, man. I guess by Nate, like, it's a puncher's chance, but they've got a Mike Tyson type of punch.
Yeah.
The Jags, I feel like because they're in the AFC, I've got a little bit higher bar for. Like, are they better than the Dolphins, the Chiefs, the Ravens? Like, it's hard when you're like maybe the 4th or maybe the 5th best team, because there's one more team I want to mention here. And if we're going to use our definition, I think this team belongs in prime contenders, although I do think it would be disrespectful to put them there now and not wait at least one more week. Can you guess who I'm talking about?
The Seahawks.
No. The Cincinnati Bengals.
Oh, you talking about out of the punch chance? Oh, okay.
Yeah. If the Bengals wind up in the Super Bowl, are you going to be surprised?
No, not at all.
Not at all. I still think they're just 4-3. It'd be disrespectful to put them up there ahead of teams that all have better records, that, have that chance. A team like the Cowboys, the Lions. Like, again, what more do you want the Lions to do other than wear a different uniform? But one more week, and I am putting a star now by the Bengals, by the Jags, and by the Lions. If those 3 teams win this week, they're going up.
Jags have a bye.
Okay, well, the Jags are going to have to wait 2 weeks.
But they do return and play the 49ers.
Okay, well, the winner of that team probably is going to wind up in prime contenders.
And then you got Bengals playing the Bills.
Because that's the thing, right? Prime contenders, we said the Niners were going to give them one more week and they could go down. So both those teams come off their bye and play each other.
Yep.
2 teams enter. 1 emerges.
And then you have the Lions versus the Chargers. Oh, they're also on bye.
So
it's a lot of buys.
Yeah, no, we're in that time of year, except for the Commanders because they have their bye dumb late. But that's kind of where I'm at on those teams. All right, which gets us to.
Well, we didn't say anything about Cowboys.
Didn't they? They had their bye last week, right?
They played last week. They destroyed the.
Oh, that's right. They wrecked the Rams.
Yeah, the Rams.
Oh shoot, that's right.
How you feeling about those guys?
Oh, they play the Eagles on Sunday.
Oh, measuring stick game?
That is definitely a measuring stick game. Do we think they belong?
NFL tiers.
This is the question. If the Cowboys wind up in the Super Bowl, would you be surprised? And if it's like, no, then they belong in prime contenders. If it's kinda, but I see it, then it's puncher's chance.
I feel as though I think I'll wait a week. I'll wait a week because, again, Dallas does this. They do this every year.
That's where I'm at. And it's a little bit treating them like the Lions, but at least we're being consistent.
Yep.
You go, and they don't even have to beat the Eagles, especially because it's in Philly.
Mm-hmm.
You go toe-to-toe with the Eagles this week, Dallas, you get elevated. You get promoted.
Because we know what happened when they played the 49ers.
Yeah.
They went out and got embarrassed.
Right.
So
can you do it against the best?
Exactly.
All right. So that's puncher's chance. Anybody that needs to drop. The Browns are and the Bills, the only two teams that we haven't discussed yet. Bills won last Thursday. The Browns, they won this weekend, yeah? Or no,
they lost to the Seahawks.
They lost, that's right, to the Seahawks.
Lost to the Seahawks.
They're so hard to. I'm okay keeping them where they're at because I just don't know what to do with their quarterback situation right now.
Yeah.
So let's just keep them where they are for another.
But
week.
if they lose another game,
I think everyone. I'm even going to take the Stars away because literally everyone in that category is super vulnerable, or like right on the verge of going up.
Yeah.
All right. Interesting, but not quite good enough. Any of these teams deserve to go up to puncher's chance. Commanders.
No.
Rams.
No.
Falcons, we should probably circle back on going down. Seahawks.
You think down? I think with Taylor Heineke, they have a better chance, but that's my own personal opinion.
If they wind up in the Super Bowl, bro.
I'm not saying Super Bowl, but I'm not saying they go down to no chance.
Yeah, that's true. Fine. Seattle.
Seahawks, they seem to be, things trending upward, to be honest.
I mean, they beat a team
NFC
that was
West
in
too.
puncher's chance.
Yep.
I think they belong to go up. I'm gonna put them up.
I like it.
All right, Browns. Seahawks are now officially graduating. Steelers.
They keep winning. They keep finding ways to win.
But they're not good enough. Like I cannot, in good conscience, put them on the same tier as like the Cowboys, the Lions, and the Jags.
But Craig, all they have to do is get into the playoffs. What are they right now?
And then
are
get
they 6-2?
smoked.
You never know.
The Steelers right now are 4-3.
4-3.
If they keep winning, then we're gonna have to maybe make a call. But I don't think they're going to.
Yeah, let's leave.
They're gonna float around 500.
Yeah.
Tampa.
No.
New Orleans.
No.
Chargers.
No.
Not yet. They need to
not
keep
yet.
winning. Their schedule was murderous. If they can go on a streak here, they could eventually get up. Jets. No.
Nope.
Houston.
No.
They need to go down. Not yet.
Yeah.
Indy.
Let's see after this week. Indy. I don't know the way their defense looked last week, or the secondary in particular. Let's give it another week.
Yeah. And then Minnesota.
Green Bay also needs to
That's the last team we're going to talk about.
Okay.
Minnesota. They. Oh,
I think
God.
you leave them there.
I think they have to stay.
Yeah.
It's so unfortunate because really, realistically, without Kirk and their quarterback situation, they have no chance. But they've now figured it out, and they've really turned their season around. And if they had Kirk, I think we would be talking about them being a week away from moving up.
Mm-hmm.
Alas, that's the league. No chance. And then Green Bay, who I have already moved down to no chance.
Good.
Yeah.
Because, man.
That is sad.
I don't know what. Yeah, it's some coaching malpractice going on over there.
Carolina, Denver, Arizona, Giants, New England, Tennessee, Las Vegas, Green Bay.
A lot of these teams the Commanders have played, correct?
Yeah, it's real sad. I tell you what, if
we have another one on the schedule this week, huh?
If the Patriots beat the Commanders, do we have to swap them?
Yes. No, well, we're not swapping. The Commanders will just join the crew.
Oh, okay.
Yes, they will just join the 2-6 New England Patriots in no chance.
Fair enough. You can't beat New England, although it's a terrible matchup.
Yeah.
No chance. No chance indeed.
Do you think elsewhere people have the Commanders in no chance?
Probably, although they are 3-5. They were obviously. I mean, they won last week. They had a chance to go 500.
Yeah.
They went toe-to-toe with the Eagles.
Twice.
I think they're in the right category.
Okay. Still
But they ain't
interesting,
far.
Nope.
So we'll see. You got to kind of really be bad.
Yeah.
And like top 10 pick bad. And right now they're like 12.
Yep.
So that's nice. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. Those are NFL tiers. We do them every single Thursday at 5:30. When we get back, what are analytics actually? And how are they actually used in the NFL? A dissertation and complaint next on the Team 980. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And there has been a lot of conversation over the last, let's say, 36, 48 hours, especially in DC circles, about analytics. Because all of a sudden the Commanders make these trades, and we hear that Eugene Shen, the new senior vice president of football strategy, who's basically the head of the Commanders analytics department, officially as of November 6th, but clearly he's working now, was involved in these decisions. And I have observed this, like I have observed many conversations about analytics over the years, in utter awe and disappointment and confusion as to what some people think analytics are, what some people think analytics aren't, and I think most importantly, stunned at the disrespect people have for professionals who actually do the analytics, if you will. The idea that people who use analytics to inform their decisions don't realize some of the limitations of analytics that you on Twitter or YouTube or to your friends or to whatever love to point out is hilarious. And I'll be more descriptive here. So, analytics, to scope all the way out. Analytics are just a fancy word for stats. And it is the use of numbers, taking what has happened in a quantifiable way and understanding the context in which those numbers exist, and then using that to inform your decision. There is no definitive make or break. It just gives you the possibilities and what has happened in the past, and it is supposed to inform your decision making, which is error number one that a lot of people make. A lot of people say, oh, analytics said this, analytics said that. No, analytics gave you the range of possibilities, and the humans interpreting those numbers made a decision. You know, if analytics say, to use a very basic example, you should go for it, or you have a 70% chance that you're going to win the game if you go for it on a fourth down call, and you go for it and you lose the game, the analytics weren't wrong. You just wound up in the 30%, not the 70%. Rarely is anything analytically driven in terms of the information that's given to a decision maker that says 100% you should do this. It could be interpreted that way, but the numbers merely give you a percent based off of history and precedent. And based off the situation, you might be able to determine that, like, you have a higher possibility of being on the wrong end of those numbers and go, quote unquote, against the analytics, right? The example I always use with this is one that Sean McVay told me when he was here as the offensive coordinator. If the analytics say I should go for it on a fourth down based off time, score, situation, down, distance, yardage, obviously the down would be fourth, but yardage to go, and the play that I have, so the analytics say, like, if you go for it, that's the better decision. Your chances of winning are higher. But the plays I've been working on were that we've been best at in short yardage are off tackle or let's say halfback dive, to use Madden terminology, running between our center and our left guard. But our left guard got hurt in this game. And by the way, of course, Sean was telling me this before he was the coach of the Rams. We're playing the Rams and they have Aaron Donald. My percentages don't look quite the same. I've got to think critically about, do I trust my other plays? Do I trust my personnel to hold up? Do I just punt or take the field goal and live with whatever that result is because it might be better in this situation? And to illustrate that point more, could you conjure up, quote unquote, analytics that say step back threes are the best shot in basketball? You could, if you limited your data set to James Harden in Houston and maybe added in some Steph Curry and Dame Lillard. Be like, wow, that's really efficient. Those shots go in all the time and they're worth 3 points. Analytics. No, that's not how analytics work. And this is what frustrates me, I think, with Ron Rivera. And frankly, to use someone who everyone would say, all due respect, is a much better coach than Ron Rivera, and someone who's one of the most successful, if not the most successful coach in his profession ever, Nick Saban, was on the Pat McAfee show today and said something incredibly stupid. Does that mean that I'm smarter than Nick Saban? Hell no. But Saban he was talking about his conversations and things he actually talks about with Bill Belichick when they talk. And he said, sometimes we'll talk about things like fourth down strategy, when we want to go for it, when we don't. And he said, well, what the analytics will tell you is what happens if you go for it, but what they won't tell you is what happens if you don't make it. And that especially changes based off of field position. I don't know who's doing analytics at Alabama, but whoever it is just took their clipboard and smashed their face with it. Because it's exactly what it gives you. And so and by the way, one thing that I think is important to point out before we go even further is that analytics are far more in football whether to go for it on fourth down or not. That is a rudimentary, elementary, very silly, very narrow use of them. That if you think that's all it is, you don't know and I don't want to say like you don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to be nicer than that because why would you know? Like, you're busy doing your job. There are analytics that go into roster building. There are analytics that go into game strategy, pass run in certain situations. There are analytics that go into certain types of pass plays or route concepts against certain coverages. Like, the thing about data is everything is to a point quantifiable. Success, whether you're successful or not, how you define success, and you can adjust the parameters and the data and everything to paint the picture that you want. You can take out, and a lot of teams do this, like, well, we want to take out garbage time runs, or we want to take out, in basketball, we want to take out transition because we're trying to look at things in a half-court offense. Like, you can limit or include or exclude whatever data you want, and these teams have the power to do that. Thanks to the work that they've done with a variety in the NBA, it's a company called Second Spectrum. I think is still who's doing it. They had the tracking cameras for years and have been doing this stuff. For the NFL, Amazon and the GPS chips that they have in the shoulder pads now has given teams immense amount of data. But to Saban's fourth down analogy, it literally does take field position into account. And what the analytics basically would tell you about that particular situation is if you go for it and get it, your win probability is X. If you go for it and don't get it, if you go for it, your win probability is X. If you kick a field goal, your win probability is Y. And if you punt, your win probability is Z. And theoretically, you would pick the one with the highest win probability. And the analytical formula that goes into win probability includes whether you get it or not, whether you make the field goal or not, and what happens after that in similar games that have happened in the history of your data set. In the case of the NFL, I don't know how rich their data set is. I don't know if they're including all 100 years. I don't know if they're including since the merger in 1970. I don't know if they just, started in 1990 whatever, in 2000 whatever. They look at the last 5 years. I'm sure some teams do it differently. I don't know how much access they have to play-by-play information that goes into these numbers, but it literally does look at that. And it's like if you played 1,000 games or 100 games and you kick the field goal, then the chances that you win are, let's say, 55%. If you go for it, the chances are 70%. And if you play that 100 times, you'd win 70 and not win 30 because that's what the history of the data tells you. And taking data that is large and applying it to a single situation means accepting that there could be multiple outcomes. But again, if a guy like Nick Saban doesn't understand that, I don't know how the average fan is. But I'm here to tell you that this stuff is important, it's here to stay, and it's valuable. And I think it is very unbecoming for so many people, and I don't get where people get off on this, think that you're smarter than, scientists. These are data scientists. Eugene Shen is one of the best, the guy the Commanders hire. Like, he went to school for this stuff, and schools that most of us can't get into. And that doesn't mean that he would be your job or that he's a better person or he's more valuable to society than someone with a job that is manual labor or an idiot talking into a microphone or a smart person talking into a microphone. I'll let you decide. But the point is, like, these people that work on the analytics side of sport are not making decisions in a vacuum. The good ones understand the limitations of their own data, and the best organizations realize how to take the different pieces of data, because they all technically have access to the same stuff, and actually use them effectively to say the best teams have resources allocated in the draft at these positions, and that's something that we should model ourselves after. Or, hey, that's an outlier. Or, hey, that is true, but we see a trend here that it is changing. And that's the thing about data and analytics. And this is the last point I'll make, and then we can take some calls on this next at 301-230-0980. Is when you have a data set and you add things to it, things change. And this is actually where I think people get tripped up the most. Is over time, there are trends and things that change, because you could, for instance, say in football right now, the data suggests that it is more efficient to pass the ball, and passing leads to winning. But when everybody thinks that, there are things you do as a defense to then try to make passing harder, which is then going to offense, defense. They do their battle over the course of, let's say, the next 5 years. And in 5 years, the data is going to look different because we've got more of it. And so being able to understand the trends and then take, say a data person comes to a quote-unquote football person and is like, hey, I'm seeing this. The ability for those two people to then get together and figure out why means they could be ahead of the curve on the next trend. And that's what the best organizations do. And that's what Eugene Shen has done, from my understanding of his resume, at multiple stops along his career. So yes, it is whether or not to go for it on fourth down. Absolutely. But it's also so many other things. Looking at traits of college players and saying these are the ones that seem to translate well to the NFL. It helps your scouting. It helps your roster construction. It helps how you manage your salary cap. And instead of being one of these people that's like, analytics are stupid, I just want a football person. What you should want is a football person who can speak to the analytics people and figure out where the league is going before the league gets there, so that they're the first ones on the scene and can take advantage. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Your calls on all of that. 301-230-0980. Next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up in about 10 minutes, we will talk Wizards. And Anthony, the analytics thing that I was just talking about actually kind of flows into some of the Wizards stuff. Something I meant to have you pull, so this is my bad. It's not a finable offense on either end of it. But Will Dawkins was on with the Junkies last week, and he talked about did something that I've never heard an NBA GM do in like a regular interview. Like sometimes guys will spill stuff at like the Slow and Analytics conference, but Will talked about how like basically Lurch asked what I thought was a good question. It's one that I kind of understood the answer to as someone who's probably a little more into the analytics and the nerd stuff than a lot of people are. But he asked, like, they were talking about, like, rim protection, right? And he's like, well, is it dependent on personnel or is it dependent, like, or is it independent? And he's like, well, it's a team stat. So, like, we know protecting the rim, if we do it at a certain percentage, then our chances of winning go up an X amount. And, like, obviously that is going to be dependent. Like, that's something that informs who you play, but also who you acquire and what you value. It's like, oh, well, if we have to protect the rim at that, who's good at it? We got to go get that player, or we got to play these players. If Bilal Coulibaly ups our rim protection percentage by X percent, then, like, I know he's got a lot of other holes in his game, but maybe we should consider playing him more. So, like, that's a good example in basketball. But he actually went a step further, and it was like, okay, so what are some of these internal metrics, right? And he talked about, like, an estimated field goal percentage. I think he might have even used estimated effective field goal percentage. I'd have to go back and hear the actual bite. But the idea was that, yes, shots go in or they don't. But what kind of shots are we forcing? And, like, one of the things that they're tracking is, okay, if we tell players this is a stat that matters for you, this estimated field goal percentage, do you do a good job on defense of forcing those shots? And that is, like, every single shot, there is an estimated, like, percent or an estimated value of, right? A contested 2 goes in X percent of the time. It's worth 2 points. And you multiply that together, and, like, that's a value. That's a number. Same thing with threes. It goes in X amount of time. And certain spots on the floor and, like, in the paint, contested versus uncontested. Like, all of these things, if they wanted to, they have the ability to look at going right, going left, going weak hand, going strong hand. Like, they can look at all this stuff, and it tells you about what is Will called it, the process-oriented nature of how they're evaluating this team, knowing that, like, are we trying to force the bad shots for the other team? Are we trying to take the right shots for us? And the right shots for us are not going to go in as often as we hope they do in the future because we're going to have better shooters. And the shots for the other team might go in more often because we don't really have that good of defenders. And, like, that's a really good example of, like, process type of stuff that is used in evaluation that just watching the game and yelling because they can't hit a shot is not actually indicative of, are they doing the right things that can help maximize their chances of success now and in the future.
I'm not going to lie, Craig. All of this analytics talk and the way you just explain all of that definitely did, rattle my brain a little bit. Just because it is a lot to, process and consume, and it does take, specific individuals to go out there and, look at the data and things of that nature. And a lot of people don't want to do that. They want to, speculate. They want to, formulate their own opinions without actually, doing the due diligence.
That's actually a great point. I think actually probably some of the reason that people hate analytics is it takes away the fact that everyone's entitled to their opinion and that your feelings are the only thing that matters. Like, I've never actually thought about it that way, but it's like, oh, who are these nerds to tell me about football or basketball or whatever? Like, baseball's kind of embraced it because baseball is baseball, the reason it's the best sport for analytics because it's the most contained. It is pitcher versus batter, with the variables of the fielders and their ability to do things. But, like, it's pretty easy to see typically whether a ball should have been caught or not. If a guy drops a ball, like, you can take that into account in the data set for the pitcher, right? But at the end of the day, there is an element of like, well, I think the offensive line sucks. Well, I think it's on the quarterback, and I think it's the play caller. And then when you have data that's like, no. It's, in the case of sacks, like, it's the quarterback. Like, we studied this. Then it takes away the emotional part. And that's not even me, like, defending analytics in a way, because what makes sports fun is the emotion of it. Like, we don't do this to sit around and then be like, ooh, cool data sets. Like, that's not what makes this fun. I do think it can inform our opinion. And if I was working in it and my job was to win, like, I would 1,000% want to have that information. But, like, it does take some of, like, the debate out of it in a way that I could see, especially people who grew up watching sports without the advanced data, like, and it was all gut and whatever. But I think that's the thing too, is like, there's a phrase, or not a phrase, an anecdote that's kind of been going around recently around some different issues that I'll just use and strip away to use for sports here. Like, in I think it was the 1950s. Anthony, I don't even know if you knew this. Do you know that they used to, like, not let kids be left-handed?
I think I've heard of it.
Yeah. Like, my grandmother's actually like this.
Yeah.
My grandmother was naturally left-handed, and she went to school in the 1940s, and they, like, forced the pen into her right hand because they didn't let kids be left-handed. And so all of a sudden, in, like, the 50s and 60s, when they stopped doing that because it was stupid, the number of left-handed kids skyrocketed. But it didn't. There weren't more left-handed kids. They just let left-handed kids be left-handed. And so once it went from, like, 0 to 60, and then it stayed at 60, or 0 to whatever it was, and it stayed there because those kids were there all along. We just started actually being able to track them because you weren't forcing them to be right-handed. And so there's a little bit of that happening with, oh, well, analytics is newfangled. Like, how did so-and-so win so many games? Honestly, they were probably good at guessing the analytics. Like, me bringing up Nick Saban not understanding analytics doesn't mean Nick Saban actually sucks as a coach. It means that Nick probably does a lot of those calculations in his head accurately without having the actual numbers in front of him. Like, he understands the risks and rewards without the data. And he's good at making those decisions at a higher clip than other coaches naturally. Also, Nick Saban's good enough for recruiting that a lot of, fourth down decisions, for instance, don't matter for him because maybe 3 times a year does he actually have to make a critical game decision because most of the time his team's winning by 50. So there's a lot to it. But I think that it's, like, important to put that in context. Like, the main thing I hope people would take away from this, and, like, what irks me is actually on the other side of it. It's not the people that hate analytics and think they're stupid. It's the people that think that they are actually into analytics and they found some flaw in it, and they think that the professionals who do this for a living don't know it. Oh, analytics are prescriptive. They're not diagnostic. Actually, there are some that are diagnostic. And the ones that are prescriptive, a.k.a. they tell you what happened, not they predict what's going to happen, prescriptive, not predictive, or diagnostic, not predictive. There's also prescriptive. There's different kinds. Like, the people who do this professionally know that. You're not smarter than them because you have a Twitter account and are good at talking about analytics on Twitter. Let's go to Patrick real quick, and then we'll do some Wizard stuff at the bottom of the hour. Patrick, go ahead, though. You're on the Hoffman Show. Patrick! Oh, sad. Anthony, what was Patrick's question? You said he had a good one.
Patrick had something along the lines of when, for instance, if somebody's doing a Clippers game and James Harden dribbles left and, he takes 2 dribbles and makes a shot, do they just put that into the system? Like, how do they necessarily go about, In
the NBA, it's very easy. They have tracking cameras. So they have these very special cameras that track every player plus the ball. and like understand when the ball goes through the net and like all that kind of stuff. It combines with like the game flow and the timing and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, they literally do. So there's a system called, I feel like they just changed it, but for years it was a company called Second Spectrum. Or maybe Second Spectrum's the new one, and it used to be Synergy. Anyway, they have a system, and they can literally go through and sort and be like, I would like to watch all of James Harden's 2 dribble pull-ups going left. And they can watch the clips of all of them, and they can see the data on all of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very
It's a whole world out there. And then, like, the great front offices, and everyone does this to an extent, some are just better at it than others, have formulas based off of certain things. And they can, you got a formula like PER, player efficiency rating, where it's like we take their efficiency, their usage rate, their blah, 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 how many points they score, how many rebounds, how many offensive rebounds, how many this, how many that. And we like kind of create a score for players. And that stuff gets a little hairy, but it exists, and every organization uses it. Okay, we'll talk a little Wizards next. One thing that their analytics will show them is that defensively they're not good. One thing that watching tape will tell you, watching the games will tell you is, I'll tell you next. It's the Hoffman Show, wrapping up here on the Team 980 and the free Odyssey app. Also streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. So Wizards last night started all right again, and then yikes again, and then miraculous fourth quarter comeback that doesn't have enough juice in it, but is also kind of led by the fact that it's the end of the bench guys against the Hawks end of the bench guys again, a la the Celtics the other night. And Anthony, it's such a weird season, obviously, for the Wizards, and trying to talk about them, I don't want to say like seriously, but trying to talk about them in a way that says like, hey, they're trying to win games right now is silly, because they're obviously not built to win this season. But I also think it's like, we should treat them like a professional basketball team, and they are trying to win within the context of this season while understanding that like the future is more important. So with all that like preamble said, I think they have a serious like issue with the way that they're playing their guys right now. And I'm curious to see what kind of patience Wes Unseld and perhaps the front office, to the extent that they want to put their thumb on the scale, how much longer they tolerate it. The starters last night, Poole's a minus 22, Jones is a minus 23, Muscala is a minus 22, Kuzma is minus 16. Denny actually winds up being a plus 3 on the night, but he's one of the guys that I just cannot figure out right now. The 7 minutes that, like Anthony Gill and Ryan Rollins and those guys came in the game, they actually destroyed the Hawks. Koulibaly was out there for a lot of those minutes. Rollins and Gill are a plus 17. And do I think that those are actually like two of the better guys on the team who should be playing a bunch? Like, of course not. It just so happened to be how they played at the end of the game last night. But what I think the big problem is, and the thing that like is super apparent against the Celtics, but you see it last night, is this team is just so freaking small, man. Like, oddly, Muscala didn't play at all against the Celtics, considering Gafford's hurt, and that obviously is making them even smaller. But like Kuzma and Avia and like they can't be playing power forward like a ton. They certainly can't be playing 5. Like, I mean, Kuz is a 4, but like Denny can't be playing too much 4 defensively. He's not big enough. The 4s in this league are too big right now for him, and he's better as a perimeter defender anyway. But I think the other thing too, and like this is where I wonder how long they tolerate it and what they ultimately do here, is like Tyus and JP, I think, are both really good basketball players that can help you on a winning team. Having them as your starting backcourt is murdering you, because they are, say, targets defensively at 6 feet tall apiece.
I mean, it's more so an effort thing for Poole. I think Tyus, I mean, he's a small guy, but that doesn't mean he can't be, a little tenacious. Like, his brother's smaller than him.
Yeah,
I'm not
but
gonna say
like
Trey is a defensive liability.
These guys, I mean, but I think offensively too, like it means you have bigger guys on you, and like it's bothered them. So it's one thing when like you're the one small guy out there, but I just think playing them together is like becoming quickly an untenable situation.
I don't like them playing together. To be honest, I think DeLon should be starting. Maybe you bring Tyus off the bench so he can get, Kispert shots, Shamet shots, and even possibly set up Koulibaly a little bit. I think Tyus's role when he first came over was to sort of kind of be the floor general, but it's hard to do that when, Kuz is doing some ISO stuff, Poole is doing ISO stuff.
Well, and that's the other thing is like I have been surprised at the shot selection for Jordan the first couple of games. I thought this dude was going to come in and take 1,000 shots a game. Like, he's just not.
He's taking bad shots, though, Craig.
I mean, that's part of the Jordan Poole experience.
I mean, but I equate a lot of those bad shots for a lot of shots taken. Like the one shot where he came down, spun, and tried to shoot over KP. To me, that's 3 bad shots. And in the grand scheme of things, it's 1 shot. But I'm just saying, like,
we're saying when he the one that got blocked by Porzingis the other night.
Yeah,
like,
and then he went down and scored.
Yeah, I mean, like, if it's not Porzingis, though, like, he's hit that shot. It's a creative way to get a three-pointer off. But, like, I think what's crazy is, like, his shot attempt numbers are not that different than what they were in Golden State. Now, he's shooting a worse percentage.
Yeah.
And he's been terrible from three so far this year. And, like, that'll change. This happens. But, like, Poole last year took 15 a game, like 15 and a half shots a game. He's taking 16 this year. He took 7.8 threes the last 2 years on average. He's taken 7.3 this year. Now, granted, he's also doing that actually in less minutes. He averaged 30 a game, and in part because he doesn't play a lot late last night. He's only averaging 27 minutes a game. But I think, like, he's got to figure out how to get more shots off, where, like, Kuzma is kind of more in the 20-shot range, what I expected. I don't know, man. Like, if they're going to be more competitive in games, I really do think they're going to have to change up these lineups. And that's probably not what Will Dawkins and Michael Winger want to do, because they want to maximize. Like, if I had to pick one guy who's going to get traded first from this team, my guess would be Tyus Jones. I think someone would be like, that is a useful backup point guard that can help us in the playoff games. We would like him. But he is not the right guy to pair with Jordan Poole. Not that Poole's necessarily definitely going to be here a long term, but if I'm Wes and I'm trying to get more production out of my starters right now, I would definitely consider starting, like you said, DeLine, get that more defensive, bigger body out there, and then, you know, Tyus can play more with, like, Johnny Davis, a bigger, more defensive-minded guard, or Corey Kispert, who's got some size. Like, they're, you know, Koulibaly, obviously, and, you know, they need to find a way. That to me is the other big lineup decision that is coming. I know you just signed Denny to a big deal, a long-term deal. I think Denny's better as a bench player. I'd start Koulibaly pretty quickly. I know he's got to come along. He's only 19, but, like, let's get that kid out there and make some stuff happen. Because I think he's dangerous now.
Yeah, I think DeLon could also be a guy that a team trade for. He's actually been playing pretty solid.
Yeah.
Yesterday went out, had 9 assists again.
I don't disagree with that. I'm kind of surprised he's still here, to be honest.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I don't know what they're going to do to address the front court issues. I mean,
they need Gafford to get healthy. I mean, if they really cared about it, they would be looking to make a trade for a big, but they don't.
Or you could sign. I mean, Jan Mahimi just got signed off the streets. I'm not saying you want Jan Mahimi, but I'm just saying.
Every Wizards fan just got a shiver down their spine. Not Jan Mahimi.
But I mean, what do you turn to, Denny?
If Danny Rouillet is done with his show and driving home, he just drove off, because he listens when he gets off the air and drives home. He just drove off the road hearing the name Jan Mahimi.
Oh, my God.
So sorry, Danny. So sorry. All right.
Actually, it wasn't Jan. It was Bismack Biyombo. He just signed a 1 year.
Jan Mahimi's definitely been retired for multiple years.
Yeah, Bismack Biyombo.
When was the last time Jan Mahimi played basketball? Jan Mahimi. Basketball. He's only 36 years old. Jan last played for the Wizards in 2019-2020.
Yeah. Not Jan. Bismack.
Yeah, Bismack Biyombo was a useful player for the Suns last year. Of course, he's got signed somewhere.
I'm just saying.
I don't hate it.
If we needed to sign somebody, there are people out there to be had.
There are tall humans.
Yes.
All right. Sure. It's the Hoffman Show. Run the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We definitely talk more hoops than anybody in the DMV. We'll continue to talk about the Wizards tomorrow with Dave Johnson on a Wizards game day, the first day of the NBA's in-season tournament. Then, of course, plenty of other NBA action happening over the weekend. We're on top of it all here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, it's time for Real Things, Real People Said, into real microphones. wrap it up. Wrap it up here on the Team 980. Always live on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Tomorrow on the show, it's a Football Friday. We got Damon Amendolara previewing the weekend slate. We got what else we got tomorrow? We got Take Command tomorrow. We got Rivera speaking for the first time since the Chase Young trade became official, so we'll probably have some Ron sound. Anything else we got lined up for tomorrow? I feel like we do. What am I missing?
Around the NFL, we got weekend review. We got our pick 6. We got Dave Johnson. Keys to game.
Show's kind of set.
Yeah, tomorrow, Friday, Monday. There's a lot of. We have a lot of.
I also got to test the internet at my new place tomorrow.
Oh yeah, that too.
So either if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see a fancy new set for me, my home studio, or I'll be sitting in this chair because the internet will not be working like I want it to, and I'm gonna have to come into the office on Fridays.
And then I can go like this. If you guys could see what Craig was doing off camera, I'll leave it at that.
It's time for real things.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right, one last piece of business before real things. Steelers, Titans tonight. Who you got?
I want to go with the Titans.
Do it, I dare you.
But I'm going to go with the Steelers.
Dang it. Okay, Steelers. That's who I'm on as well. We've been good on Thursday Night Football recently.
Let me make sure I write this down because Craig sometimes swears up and down that I'm, cheating him out of his pick. So I want to write this down.
How many times
now.
have I been right when I've questioned you?
None. What I had to pull the clip? You've been right before?
Yeah.
Must have been last season. Couldn't have
It
been.
It might have been last season. It's not like I ask often, but there was definitely one that I was like, no, you're wrong, and I was
I
correct.
think it actually involved the Steelers too.
Also, by the way, you owe Grant Paulson a lot of money.
Oh, did he drive off
He
the
drove
curb?
said he drove into a telephone pole when you said Jan Mahimi.
I apologize. I meant Bismack Biyombo. Sorry.
That's an amount of money that it can't go on the fine board there, Ant. That's 100%. 100% on you.
I will be evading him and all his calls.
It's a good thing he knows where you work. All right. Real things, real people said into real microphones. The best sound of the day. You got Rams-Packers this weekend, which is the battle of the LaFleur brothers. You got Mike, Mike is the offensive coordinator for the Rams. Matt, the head coach of the Packers. And so the obvious question to ask Mike when he went to the podium today in Los Angeles, which is who are your parents rooting for?
Parents choose which teams to root for in a situation like this. So do they have it down at this point with this being the 7th time this is going?
Yeah, I mean, they like me more, so that's an easy answer.
Anthony, you got siblings, right?
I have a ton of siblings. 5 brothers, 2 stepbrothers, and 1 sister.
Dang.
I know.
All right, so if you were to play one of your siblings, if you wanted to have your parents root for you, which one of your siblings would you want to be going against?
Oh, definitely not my baby brother. He's spoiled. I would probably say my brother that sort of kind of looks like me. His name is Antoine. My name is Anthony.
Yeah.
Blame my dad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who's older?
I'm 1.5 years older than him.
So they just mess up on you and they thought they would try again?
Nah, not
That's
necessarily.
what it feels like, bro.
Not necessarily. I don't think so.
Are you not questioning it?
You might be on to something. Dad, if you're listening, I need an honest answer.
All right, so that one there. And then apparently they messed up that worse because you think they'd root for you.
The thing is, my mom is actually listening, so she'll probably text me.
So to Anthony's mom and dad, you can't be mad at me. I didn't make him answer the question. He was silly enough to answer the question.
Yep.
That's on him. Last but not least, in the Raiders locker room today, Devontae Adams squared up one of his teammates, not like a fight, in one-on-one mini hoop basketball. This is how it sounded.
Hey, get ready for this. I'm calling it right now. This is why they're losing, because they're worried about the wrong shit. In the locker room, they're playing basketball. Run the right route, catch the ball. Come on. Oh, catch that. Come on. Come on. Come on. Hey.
Nothing but the bottom of the net. Seems like guys are having fun without Josh McDaniel. Imagine that. All right, that's our show. We'll see you tomorrow here on the Team 980 Talking Terps.